Welcome to this. I just want to go forward a bit and talk about um, the the agenda that we had last time. So this is a part two, and I'm not going to go over much of last time, but in the last time we talked about 10 patterns, and the patterns were more strategy and tactics for agile transformations. And again, sometimes people in the agile community they don't like the word transformation. So if you don't like it, then cross it out on your screen and put whatever word you like in there. I'm really just talking about adoption or transformation patterns. I'm not stuck on anything or any framework or anything like that. The strategy and tactics were around things like creating a transformation team last time, organizational alignment being important. We talked a little bit about measurement. We talked about how important it could be for HR to partner with HR. How I really think it's very important to partner with the organization, but HR is a really key strategic partner. Uh, Today's session is going to be talking about a set of 10 different patterns, and these are what I would call mindset and cultural patterns. Maybe another way of saying it would be behavioral patterns that are useful. And I think these two go hand in hand. The first collection is more like, again, more execution based or tactical based. This set is mindset based, or what you're trying to set in the culture. I'm going to go forward really fast. So everyone close your eyes so you don't get dizzy, please. Okay. Close your eyes, close your eyes. Okay. So now we're at part two, mindset and culture. So this set of patterns, and I'm just going to dive in. The first one is I think it's really important for organizations to eat their own. There's this notion of eating your own dog food. And if you're from a culture where that sounds bad, then change it. But it's practicing what we preach. Another way of saying it is practice what you preach or walk our talk. And I think it's incredibly important in a transformation for everyone. The coaches, I see so many coaches who they're great at coaching what agile should look like, but when you look at their behavior, I'm kidding around, but there's coaches that say whip limit, and they'll say reduce your whip limit, but then when you look at the coach, they have a whip limit of 8,000 items, and they're going crazy and they're running around, and what the dilemma there is they're saying whip limits are good and multitasking is bad, but they're not adhering to it themselves. And it's really important for our behavior to align. And I just picked on coaches, but it's really true for leaders, like leaders in an organization who are saying, go agile, right? We want to do this. And I paid I paid for Bob Galen to come in. I paid for a new Gopal to come in. I paid all this money for classes. I've done all this support. Now go agile, but I don't want to behave that way myself. And that actually isn't good enough. We have to do that. So showing and leading the way, behavior, I think trumps talking. Behaving like an agile leader in your life, like showing vulnerability. You can say failure. You can say we're failure friendly, or you can show vulnerability at an organizational level and say I failed, and how do we do that? How do we show up? And you're empathetic to challenges and you listen. So, and we apply agile principles to all aspects of the organization. So truth telling, and I don't just tell people, so it's not just I want people to tell truth downward, but as a leader, I need to be able to handle someone telling me the truth. Before this session, Anu and I were talking about feedback, and we were talking about, how you can get defensive about feedback. Well, leaders can get defensive about feedback. And if leaders on the one hand are saying, I want us to be transparent and I want us to be truth tellers, and that's the organization. But if the first time someone tells them the truth, they're like, oh no, that's not true. And if they start getting defensive about it and personalizing about it, then they'll shut down the culture. I mean, because again, it needs to be aligned. So focus on the people, trust the team. That check mark list is things that we have to live, not talk about, etc. So truly eating our own dog food is crucial. I think this is where coaches can be helpful in an organization, because a lot of times the leader or the organizational leadership team, they have blind spots and they don't really see the behavior gaps that they have. And a good coach, if they have courage and if they can communicate effectively and if they partner with leadership, they can show them their blind spots so that they can improve it. They can have the challenging conversations with them. So first pattern is eat your own dog food. Second pattern, and it's related to my whip limit, is slowing down. There's this notion of slow down to speed up. I don't know if anyone's ever said that in their teams. I think it's a common pattern in a new Agile team where they bite off more than they could chew, if that makes sense, right? It's a pretty common pattern where teams, they're enthusiastic, they're youthful, and they're enthusiastic, and they very often they want to go really fast, and they have all the ideas, etc. And that's all good. There's nothing wrong with that. But do you have the muscle memory? Do you have the skills to truly go fast? And very often they don't. And I often, as a leader in Agile context, when a transformation, I try to slow people down, which is counterintuitive to, or counter to most leadership stances. So I'm literally a senior leader in an organization, and I'm asking people instead that we're going Agile so that we speed up, and I'm asking them to slow down, to speed up, meaning figure out how we do that. So I play the quality card. I talk about doing it right the first time. I talk about sort of the intent of not hacking things. I trust the estimates of the team. I think very often in the beginning, a lot of times I'm going to be teaching a cow workshop next week, Monday through Wednesday at a client. And I think they're really expecting more capacity than they have. And they really don't trust their team's estimates historically. And I think they just have to trust, and they're looking for guarantees and things like that. But slowing down to speed up says, if the team says it takes 8 weeks and you think it's 4, or your customer needs it in 4, the answer is 8 weeks. Accept it, and then negotiate your world around you with that that's your truth. And don't put undue pressure on the team. The other thing is play the experiment card. So what I mean by stop playing the speed card is there's other cards that we can play, but we want to. I think it's bad for the transformation if we're focusing on speed as our prime directive. The other thing is planning. I think it's a sort of, I think, a hidden factor of Agile that folks think that there's no planning in Agile teams very often. And I actually think there is planning, and that planning is important. It's just different. It's not traditional planning. And I think it's important to give teams space to plan, to give them time to plan. Have you ever implemented Scrum and everyone starts counting up the amount of time that the events take? Anyone ever, right? I've had that happen just in the last 2 weeks. It's happened to me in 3 different clients. And my head wanted to explode almost, right? It's like, oh my God, it's like you're looking at the minutes and you're missing the big picture, right? We're not tracking minutes, we're tracking outcomes. And I get a little frustrated with it because I hear it all the time. And it's, how do we shift from speed and sort of being efficient on utilization or bathroom breaks, optimizing our bathroom breaks? No, don't look at that. How do we optimize output? How do we optimize outcome? Not output, but outcomes, etc. And that's part of it. And really making sure that we're reflecting, that we're spending time reflecting and improving and experimenting. So slowing down to speed up, it's almost like a mantra that you should be hearing in the hallways. You should be hearing it in all the events. You should be hearing it everywhere. And I think this is more of a leadership mantra, or it's more of a coaching mantra, or a Scrum Master mantra, where we're reminding people. And we're giving them the space. So we're not just saying it. Remember so up here, eat your own dog food. Words don't count. Behavior trumps words. So we're actually saying slow down to speed up, and we mean it. We behave that way. So it's a cultural thing. A third cultural element that I'm finding, and Anu knows this from the Cow class, and it's something that I'm just really talking a lot about in my journey, is storytelling. Is instead of talking about a daily stand-up or dusting off the Scrum Guide, right? As a coach, you run into a team and they have a problem, they're doing something wrong, and you reach into your back pocket and you whip out the Scrum guide and you flip to page 9 and you show them you're doing it wrong. Here's what you do. So instead of sort of being that by rote, we start instead. That's one approach to teach. Another approach to teach and to show and is to share stories in the organization. And storytelling becomes a way of life in the organization, I think. And remember, these are transformation maturity patterns. Everyone with me? Or essential patterns for transformation. It's not, so it's a journey to achieve them. But I think successful transformations, if you look at the organization, storytelling gets richer and richer and richer over time. And people become better and better at it over time. And better than me. I do not profess to be a wonderful storyteller. I try to tell stories, but I'm not the best storyteller. But that's not going to stop me from being a storyteller because I think it's a good communication. So we can talk about how teams and individuals are getting it right. We talked about eating our own dog food.
One question here.
Go ahead.
So when you say, yeah, this has been your mantra from our Cal class also, right? Storytelling. Do you have any pointers as to how to get better at it or how to become a good storyteller?
So you're going to hate this answer. The answer is, so I'll use user stories. I've always felt, and you may not like this, but people how do I become better at user stories?
Writing user stories.
And my answer is usually you just have to write a lot of them. And over time, practice makes perfect. And they want to read a book. They want a how-to guide so that they can do it very quickly. And I actually don't have a great how-to guide in my back pocket to help them. But I'm like, if you really practice a lot as a team and as an organization, you'll get really, in your context, in your domain, you'll get better. And I think it's the same thing with storytelling. So I would say just start. The other key is I think you have to be observant to find opportunities to tell the stories. So they don't just present themselves to you on a platter. You have to actually recognize things. So if I see a team that had a wonderful daily stand-up, I have to recognize that it was a wonderful daily stand-up. Then I can use that in the hallways to tell other teams what a wonderful daily stand-up looks like. You with me?
Right.
But I had to find that story. One of the things that I do is journal a lot. And one of the reasons I journal is to catch those little moments, those stories, so I don't lose them. And I just throw them down on a piece of paper. Sometimes I'll send myself a text message. Note to self, this might be a good story. Note to self, this was a wonderful, and stories don't have to be positive. They can be negative. They can be so you can have positive stories or you can have failure stories. They both can be useful, right? And so we tell all kinds. So I don't know if that helped, but I think we have to just start.
I think, being observant and picking those moments as and when they appear and keeping them in mind. Yeah.
Well, a lot of people find that that when I say that, they're like, well, what are you talking? I don't have any stories. Well, I'm like, then I call it mining for stories. You need to mine for stories. They don't just present themselves to you, I don't think. But if you look around and mine, I think you can create a story index or a repository that could be very useful. And again, remember, it's context-based. So I think leaders should look for change stories. Coaches could look for coaching stories that might be relevant for them. A Scrum Master should look for stories in their team. You with me? Are there story opportunities in their team? So depending on your position, look for stories and find them. And
just being extra conscious and observant, basically.
Yeah. So here's some examples of stories. Future state. As a Scrum Master, you might actually tell a story of what you envision the team could be. Right? We're not there, but the team doesn't know where you envision them going. They might not even agree with it, or they may agree with it. It may be motivating, or celebrate a past event, or embracing the journey. There's stories where we look back to what we've accomplished and then look forward. You with me? Or we can celebrate our learning. We can celebrate the customer. Customers are a great place to mine for stories that can motivate the team. Stakeholders, customers. You with me? like observing that. So storytelling starts, instead of having bulleted lists or elevator pitches or text messages, we try to tell more stories. This is a storytelling in a TED style. It's just a sketch note that I thought was useful here that I thought I'd share, and you can go through that. Oh, whoever that was, the names are, I thank you for interrupting me and asking the question. Everyone else can feel free to stop me because this is a pretty fast talk. There's the fourth pattern is what I would call safety, psychological safety everywhere. And I think this is more of a leadership top-down cultural sort of creating the space for the culture challenge. So, but again, it can be at a team level. If I'm a coach, I can create safety or I can reduce safety. If I'm a scrum master, I can create, a safe ecosystem in my team, or I can subtract from it. So we all want to sort of be focusing on that. Team members feel safe to take risks and be vulnerable in front of each other. Everyone with me? And one of the best ways to create safety goes back to eat your own dog food is show vulnerability. So show your vulnerability and that'll start creating safety. Show that you can take hard feedback and not, so if I get hard feedback like Anu and I were talking about and I get defensive, not only am I getting defensive, not only am I reducing the amount of future feedback I'm getting. You with me, Anu? But the other side effect is I'm creating a culture that's unsafe. I'm exhibiting a lack of in the ecosystem wherever I'm in my environment. Let's say it's a team environment or an organization division environment. I'm I'm letting people know that we don't take feedback around here. Everyone with me? This is not a good place to give feedback. So not only could Bob not take it, but maybe I shouldn't give it at all to my other colleagues, etc. So it's really important that behavior, that notion of safety becomes important. Um, I came upon this view by Timothy Clark, and sometimes safety is just this high level term, and I really like this quadrants view of safety. And he has four quadrants. He has learning safety, challenging safety, collaborative safety, and inclusion safety. And I want you to just sort of digest each one. And I think all of it is something that we can be focusing on. So learner is it's safe to ask for help. It's safe to say, I don't know. That's a pretty common sort of terminology we use. It's safe to take risks. Challenging safety is I can safely question the status quo, right? Why does Anu have a big building behind her head every time I talk to her? Is it because she has a big head and she wants a building? I'm kidding, Anu. I'm challenging the status quo, or staid practices. And it's safe to do that. Collaborative. I can chat with anyone, open communication. I can have constructive debate and feedback. So I can go, if I'm at Toyota Connected, I can go to the CEO of Toyota Connected, maybe not quite that high, but I can go there and I can have open communication. And it's safe for me to do that. And it's truly safe. What I say will not come back to haunt me, right? So I need experience in runway in that. And then inclusion safety, these titles were more flat. It's really, we're all on the same team. And we behave like we're on the same team. So when you're thinking of safety, you might want to even print this out or look at this article, but it really I think it gives us a more nuanced view to safety. If, for example, I was a coach, I might actually assess a team. If I was coaching a team or an organization, I might actually ask them in all the four of these areas how we could use a fist of five to sort of test how safe the team is. We might have learning safety, but we might not have collaborative safety if everyone's with me. So that may give us an indication of improvement. The fifth pattern is trust, and I mean this in the most, I don't know, like biggest letters. Is so first of all, trust but verify is not a trustful model. It's not. It's a distrustful model, and so there's this view of extending trust, and we need to extend trust and give it almost unconditionally. Give it, and when I say it almost, it's like give it initially unconditionally, give it again unconditionally. If someone undermines the trust, then maybe pull back a little bit, but really only do that as a last resort. And we almost flip it. Um, you should have trust conversations in hallways all the time. I remember when I was at iContact as a VP, I would my default answer to most people who asked me for guidance, like they would come to me with a team member or a team or a group of teams or a Kanban, group or whatever, and they would be worried about something. They would be worried about a date. They would be worried about quality. They would be worried about the team being committed or whatever. And I think probably 80 to 90% of the time, my default answer was, well, trust your team. Just they'll figure that out. You don't need to fix it for them. And so the reason I bring that story up is we should be saying those, that should be our default sort of response under almost all conditions, is like, trust the team, trust the team, trust the team. Or another way of saying, what did the team say? Right? I'm afraid that we're going to be behind schedule. I'm afraid we're not going to hit the date. And the question should be, but I get that. What does the team say? What does the team say? What does the team say? Or what does the owner of that responsibility say? Or what does the scrum master say? Well, what does the coach think? Not what do I think? What do these folks who are closer to things think? And the other thing is coach your teams to trust each other. So I found that even if we're creating this container, very often it's not just up at a leadership level. You don't see high degrees of trust maybe at a team, particularly in the beginning of a transformation. And we want to encourage team members have that same conversation at the team level. The other thing is you can't fake it. Is what you almost, like, people can smell it if you don't trust them. I don't know if that's the right way. That's not an academic way to say it, but you really have to. So when I say extend trust, you have to figure out how do you do it in a sincere way. You have to be sincere in giving it. Part of that sincerity is pivoting and walking away. So if I said to Anu, I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to extend trust to you and I'm going to shut up and you own the rest of the conversation. You got that? I'm actually going to leave. So I'm going to go and play with my dogs. So I extended trust, and my actions, like, there was no point of return for Anu, right? So I gave it. So she is fully trusted, and she has to start talking or whatnot. That's the kind of trust that I'm talking about. And I get the hell out of here. Maybe I go fishing, and I think it's very hard for organizations to do. It's very hard for ecosystems to do that. I guess it's the sixth pattern is creating space. The first part of this is caves and commons. And I think this is happening in organizations. InfoQ has a wonderful article. If you go to InfoQ and you search for caves and commons, you'll get an article that was circa 2007, maybe 2008, I'm thinking. Maybe it's earlier than that. I think it's actually earlier than that, where someone, I forget the author, they wrote about space for agile teams, and they talked about effective agile teams needed caves, which is private space, and commons, which is open shared space. So office and then shared collaborative tables. Everyone with me? And they talked about the importance of having both in an agile context so that people could get work done. I resonated with that at the time because I'm a developer and I'm an introvert. And it's really hard for me to be productive if I work 100% of my time with Humphrey right beside me telling me what to do, right? It's really hard. I like Humphrey, but I also like, I lose some of my productivity. And so it would be more effective if I had some private space to work on my own, and then collaborate with him. And so part of, I think, the transformation is honoring your organization dynamic, so that people can have both caves and commons. That's one aspect of space, so that they can work from home. For example, work from home strategies to me would be a way of giving folks caves, or rebuilding, if you created open spaces, rebuilding offices so folks have the notion of privacy. Uh, Virtual space for collaboration, providing the tools for that. Learning space, so it's not just physical space, it's creating the space where it's okay to hack, it's okay to learn, it's okay to experiment. And I'm not saying just it's okay. You don't complain to the team. Like I remember Google years ago, they had 20% time, and when they removed it, so the idea was 80% of my time was spent on Google work, and 20% of my time could be spent on personal projects or working collaboratively on innovation. And when Google removed that, they said, "Well, we're uncomfortable with the 20%, so now you're going to have to work at 100% on company related things." But then they said, "But you can use that extra 20 or 30%, so you can work 150%, and that could be your Google, that could be your innovation time." And to me, that's not space. That's not giving them space. That's personal space. That's sort of, sort of twisting the arm of the team. That's not what I mean. Is it really giving business space to the team? So there's no guilt. So there's work-life balance. Safety is another space issue. And then individual space where you appreciate people, where they feel like they love their job. They come in and it's like, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. This is a safe, nurturing space for me. So what I'm getting at with this pattern is we need to be thinking about space. It's almost like diversity. There's so much nuance to diversity if you think about it. It's not just, right, it's not just, sexual diversity. It's not just racial diversity. There's sort of national diversity. There's cultural diversity. There's all kinds of aspects to it. I think space has that same notion that there's a lot to it. And I think as we're transforming, we need to be considering space for the team. The seventh pattern is embracing any transformation that I think that is worth its salt, or any organization who's going agile. I don't think it's ever calm. Maybe Humphrey, I don't know about you. I'm looking for people to nod or shake their head, but I think sort of going agile is like chaotic. Mm-hmm. It's like and doing it effectively. It's change, and change is a little chaotic. And if we're experimenting, then we're pivoting and discovering and things. So I think like 20 years ago, I used to work with people and they wanted to know what they were going to do every day. When they came into the office, it's like, tell me what to do. I want the plan, and I don't want to deviate from the plan. So they wanted order. And I think transformations are chaotic. And I think stuff happens with a little smiley face, right? Stuff happens. And plans are never solid. And decision making, you make decisions every day based on the movement on the ground. And it's not absolute chaos. And I'm not alluding to absolute, global thermonuclear chaos, but I do think there's chaos. And I think part of it is embrace it. Actually, I think chaos is sort of an accelerator. So don't look at chaos as a negative thing. Actually, work to create some chaos. Work to create some churn. There's a wonderful article here about, is Tuckman wrong? And this is that Tuckman model of, sort of norming, storming, forming, performing, and or in the reverse. And I do think Tuckman was sort of wrong in that there's nothing wrong with staying in storming. So maybe it's not a linear sort of progression, but we form and then we storm, then maybe we norm, perform a little bit, then we go back to storming. And that's okay. Then we form, storm, norm a little bit, go back to storm, form, storm, 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 a little chaos. That's probably a more realistic sort of pattern for teams in agile context, in transformational context. And what I just described, I think embrace that. That's okay. And how do we maximize that to our competitive advantage? How do we maximize that to accelerate our learning? Is the point. The other point I want to make with chaos, and this is something that I found useful, I don't know if people do this enough, is I do a lot of coaching. And this is a secret. I hope you all don't take work from me because I'm giving you this is like one of my top 3 secrets of agile coaching. So you all have to promise, raise your hands that you won't share this with anyone else. All right. Almost 80% of the advice I give when someone says this is wrong or I observe something is rooted in the basics. It's rooted in like a basic tactics. It goes back to we forgot about the manifesto, or it goes back to building projects around motivated individuals. Give them the environment and support they need and trust them to get the job done. Everyone with me? And we're not doing that. So what's the fix? Humphrey, do number 5. You with me? Do 5. But that's the basics. And then people pay me. It's like if you're playing baseball, run, hit the ball, and run to first base. Bob, how do I win baseball games? Hit the ball and run to first base. That's true for a major league team or for a little peewee team. Hit the ball, run as fast as you can to first base. It's the basics. So part of when people are overly involved in the chaos, one of the ways is bring them back to center, bring them back to principles, bring them back to the principles and the basics is a really good practice. And folks will look at you weird because you're bringing them back, but there's an art to doing that. The A's pattern is I'm coming up on like 40 years as a developer, leader, coach. And in 40 years, almost every week, I hear someone tell me a client or a developer or a team is telling me how complex their world is and they're solving for complexity. And the other counterpoint that I've discovered is that they're making the complexity themselves by the way they view it. The way they view the world, they're almost comfortable. Like I said here, in this case, I said, be comfortable with the chaos. In this case, I would like to say, be uncomfortable with complexity and everywhere, and realize that there is a simplicity. Things can always be made simpler. It's just harder to do that. But one of the keys to transformation is the simplest possible solution for everything. So I have conversations about SAFe all the time, the Scaled Agile Framework. And people think that I'm against SAFe, and I'm not against SAFe per se. I'm against complex scaling frameworks. And my point in discussing it with colleagues is I would rather start with let's don't scale with SAFe. Let's scale with the simplest possible set of things that will solve our problem or solve our challenges. And then if we grow that organically because we have to, and it becomes SAFe, then we're using SAFe because that's what we need rather than complexity, rather than adopting complexity. And I think everyone sees complexity. We're comfortable with complexity, and we need to just like trust. Remember I was saying extend trust? We need to challenge ourselves to stay simple in everything we do. Is this the simplest webinar? This slide is not simple. It's complex. I need to simplify it. Anu needs to simplify Agile Africa. How she invites people, how she engages them, how she encourages them to be on time. That was a joke. That was a joke. But again, everything, the simplest possible thing. A lot of times I'm going into a client again next week, and they want to know roles and responsibilities. They want to know org charts. They want to know, we want to reorg, and we want to reorg, and I want to have a single ringable neck and a single ringable neck. Well, at the end of the day, they have 8,000 single ringable necks organizationally. That's not going to get them the results that they want. So simplicity everywhere. And this is one of those things where we just remind people. This goes to asking questions. Again, one question: is this the simplest solution that we can come up with right now? Is it? Why don't we brainstorm for 10 minutes on simpler solutions? Do we have to solve this problem right now? This is the arena of MVPs too, right? The MVP language is the arena of this. Excuse me. We only have two more patterns. I love this quote. I think I remember a movie, Bruce Lee, and he's filling a cup, and it's overflowing, and he's filling a cup, and he's filling a cup, and someone had to say stop, and I'm getting the words wrong, but he's like, you know what? In order to fill up a cup with new things, we have to empty the cup. And I see so many folks that have baggage when they go to an agile transformation. And we need to release the baggage. We need to release the hounds, and we need to release the baggage and our assumptions. And we have assumptions about commitments and team capability and trust. For example, we may be transforming a company that for 20 years has distrusted the teams and their estimates and their commitment and their work ethic. Well, we need to if we're going to go down this lane, they need to release that. Forget what you know, and empty your cup as much as you can. Accept that your go-to tactics haven't been as wonderful as you thought. Another thing I see in my coaching is people forget everything they did in the past was perfect, although the stock price fell or their competitive position fell, but everything was perfect. They forget about, it's really easy to sort of be in denial. And we may want to remind them, yes, celebrate the past, but also celebrate the failures of the past. Empty the cup, open your mind, and see what we can do. Reacquire our humility. Leaders need to reacquire, they don't know. Listen to your teams. Reacquire their empathy. Amplify learning and listening. But it's this empty the cup. We should spend as much time emptying things as we do filling things as doing. There should almost be an empty your cup retrospective or an empty your cup event where people write down things on Post-it notes and then never talk about it. It's like release it to the wind and let it go. But that's our baggage. The final pattern, I think, is stickiness. And so going agile, I don't know Toyota Connected. I'd like to pick on Toyota Connected. The agile transformation of Toyota Connected. I'm not picking on it. It's just I know there's some people that are listening that are working there. I've heard and felt that you all are very successful, and that's wonderful. I would measure the success of Toyota Connected from, let's say, Anu leaves and all of the coaches leave for greener pastures. And I forget, Anu's going to hate me, but I forget there's a gentleman there who's the head of the Agile practice, and he moves on to work for Toyota, the parent company, and people move on. So the change agents at Toyota Connected, a core of the change agents move on. But what happens to Agile at Toyota Connected doesn't change. It stays. It's sticky. It doesn't need a new energetically waving her hands. She has infected other people in a positive way. She has infected the DNA of the organization and changed the organization. And so I want us to think of transformations not as, oh, we have new metrics, or we installed SAFe, or we've been doing it for 18 months, or we have predictable velocity or predictable throughput. All of that's wonderful. But the real measure of a transfer, of the success of a transformation, is, have you shifted the culture? If you remove some of the energy, is there other energy that's left behind? The cool thing about Anu, is she creating other Anus? Or Humphrey, is he creating other Humphreys? So that they're leaving behind the energy, like the breadcrumbs, so that it's a resilient, and this should be our goal in a transformation, is resiliency. It should stand the test of time. Toyota's transformation has stood the test of time. Everyone with me? That has stood the test of time as people have evolved, as people have retired. So that's our mindset. It's the ultimate goal of any agile transformation. If the champion moves on, does the agile DNA remain behind? The counterexample of this is Capital One in Virginia, in Richmond. Capital One is on their 4th agile transformation. And the reason that they're on the 4th agile transformation is they lost their resiliency on the first one, the second one, and the third one. Now, I think they're being more resilient now, but that's ultimately the goal. 10 minutes to. I told you all that it would be shorter. If there's any questions, otherwise I'm done. I think that's the end of my slides. If there's any discussion or reactions to that set of patterns, remember I said that they were more behavioral, more soft, more cultural, and that was intentional.